As global tensions rise and old alliances fracture, one coalition is quietly building a new financial world order. The BRICS alliance. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, once seen as a symbolic bloc of emerging economies, is now growing in size, strategy, and influence. With the inclusion of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Egypt, and Ethiopia, BRICS has rapidly transformed into a counterweight to the G7, and its primary target is the dominance of the US dollar. At the most recent BRICS Foreign Ministers Summit in Rio de Janeiro, the message was coordinated and clear. It's time to reduce dependence on the West and rewrite the rules of global trade. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi declared that unilateral sanctions and tariff wars were destabilizing the global system and called for a new multilateral order rooted in fairness and economic sovereignty. While no country was named, the target was obvious: the United States. This rhetoric is now backed by action. China has launched a full-scale international push to expand the use of the yuan in cross-border payments. According to Reuters, 2025 has seen record-high volumes of yuan-denominated trade, with Beijing finalizing new currency swap deals across Southeast Asia, Africa, and even Latin America. But the most ambitious initiative is BRICS Pay, a proposed digital payment platform that would allow member states to settle trade in national currencies, bypassing both the dollar and US-controlled systems like SWIFT. Though still under technical development, several BRICS leaders have endorsed the plan, framing it as a technological path to financial independence. But while Washington postures, the markets are already reacting. The US dollar index has fallen nearly 10% since January. Gold prices have surged, and analysts are warning of long-term dollar volatility. Business Insider reports that some central banks, including those of Brazil, Turkey, and Malaysia, are steadily reducing their dollar reserves. Meanwhile, more oil is being traded in yuan and rupees than ever before. All of this points to a deeper fracture in the global financial system. BRICS isn't just resisting, it's building an alternative. And in doing so, it's pulling dozens of developing nations into a new financial orbit, one where the US can't unilaterally impose sanctions or freeze foreign assets. Countries like Indonesia, Nigeria, and Argentina have publicly expressed interest in joining BRICS or partnering on trade initiatives. For now, the dollar still holds, but the erosion has begun, not with a bang, but with quiet, deliberate moves that are shifting the global center of gravity. The real question isn't whether this transition is coming. It's whether the United States has any strategy left to stop it. In 2025, the US-China trade conflict has intensified, leading to significant disruptions in global markets. President Donald Trump's administration has imposed steep tariffs, with duties on Chinese goods reaching up to 145%. In retaliation, China has levied tariffs as high as 125% on US products and restricted exports of critical rare earth minerals. These measures have led to a sharp decline in trade between the two nations. China's export orders fell significantly in April, with the official Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index dropping to a 16-month low of 49.0, indicating contraction. US companies are also feeling the strain, with many canceling orders and delaying expansion plans due to increased costs and uncertainty. The broader economic impact is evident. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded global growth forecasts for 2025 to 2.8%, down from 3.3%, citing the escalating trade war as a primary factor. In the US, the economy shrank by 0.3% in the first quarter, and the S&P 500 experienced its worst performance during a president's first 100 days since Nixon's second term. Investors are responding with caution. Veteran investor Mark Mobius has shifted 95% of his funds into cash, citing the tariffs' role in market volatility and fears of a potential recession. Similarly, former U.S. Senator Phil Gramm has warned that the aggressive tariff policies could trigger a recession and be politically damaging for Republicans in upcoming elections. The trade war's effects are also being felt in logistics and retail. Container shipments into the U.S., especially through the Port of Los Angeles, have drastically declined, leading to concerns about empty store shelves and a strained holiday season. Retailers like Amazon are reportedly planning to display tariff costs on receipts, highlighting the direct impact on consumers. As the trade conflict continues, both nations are exploring alternative markets and strategies. China is shifting its trade and investment focus toward emerging markets, investing in low-cost manufacturing and setting up production facilities in countries like Pakistan. This diversification aims to reduce reliance on the U.S. market, which has imposed steep tariffs on Chinese exports. In summary, the escalating U.S.-China trade war is reshaping global economic dynamics, with significant implications for international trade, market stability, and economic growth. As both nations entrench their positions, the path to resolution remains uncertain, leaving the global economy on edge. As Washington's attention remains consumed by trade wars and currency battles, Beijing is quietly redrawing the geopolitical map of the Western Hemisphere, not with tanks or tariffs, but with ports, fiber optics, and billion-dollar signatures. Latin America, once viewed as America's backyard, is rapidly becoming one of China's most strategic playgrounds, and the transformation is no longer theoretical. It's happening port by port, project by project, and election by election. Between 2021 and 2024, China signed more than 30 major infrastructure and energy agreements with governments across Central and South America. In Argentina, China pledged $9.9 billion to modernize rail networks connecting the agricultural heartland with Atlantic export terminals. In Peru, construction of the $3.6 billion Chancay megaport, funded by COSCO Shipping, is nearly complete, poised to become a new hub for trans-Pacific cargo. In Brazil, Huawei has cemented its role as a dominant 5G provider, building digital infrastructure while positioning itself as an irreplaceable telecom player. According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, Chinese foreign direct investment in the region surpassed $80 billion in 2024, marking a 68% increase over 3 years. More than half of these projects include clauses for exclusive access to future logistics operations, energy production, or long-term lease rights on critical infrastructure. This isn't mere economic outreach, it's strategic entrenchment. Beijing's influence now extends well beyond contracts and cement. In Bolivia and Ecuador, Chinese-backed loans are being exchanged for favorable policy votes at the United Nations. In Panama, where Chinese firms helped expand the colon-free trade zone, diplomatic recognition has already shifted, with Panama cutting official ties with Taiwan in favor of Beijing in a highly publicized move. Meanwhile, in Honduras, Chinese companies are funding hydropower plants and road systems in exchange for preferential trade access. But nowhere is the change more visible than in logistics. Chinese investment in port infrastructure has exploded across the region. The ports of Buenaventura, Colombia, Puerto La Union, El Salvador, and Puerto Quetzal, Guatemala, now host joint ventures with Chinese state-owned enterprises, many of which come with embedded digital customs systems operated by firms linked to China's Belt and Road digital backbone. Washington, long accustomed to being the default partner in the hemisphere, has fallen dangerously behind. A 2024 report from the Council on Foreign Relations warned, the U.S. risks losing long-term control over strategic trade corridors in Latin America if it fails to counter China's economic diplomacy. Security analysts are beginning to raise alarms, not just about economic control, but about national defense implications. In 2023, Venezuela and China signed a confidential agreement permitting joint use of satellite tracking and drone surveillance facilities. While exact details remain undisclosed, recent satellite imagery reviewed by Stratfor indicates new antenna arrays and surveillance equipment at former civilian sites near La Guaira. In Brazil, a seemingly benign digital partnership between Huawei and local telecom firms now covers over 60% of the country's 5G grid, giving Beijing de facto access to metadata flows, industrial communication, and encrypted traffic used by financial institutions. While there is no evidence of abuse, the potential for intelligence leverage has prompted quiet concern within the Organization of American States. Even the cultural dynamic is shifting. In countries like Chile, Uruguay, and Costa Rica, Confucius institutes are growing in number and influence, offering language programs, scholarships, and teacher exchanges, all while reinforcing Beijing's soft power. Public polling conducted by Latinobarometro in late 2024 showed that trust in China as an economic partner had surpassed that of the United States in at least 4 Latin American countries. Amid all this, the United States has offered little by way of strategic counteraction. Aid programs remain stagnant. Tariffs on agricultural products continue to frustrate exporters in Brazil and Argentina, and diplomatic visits from senior U.S. officials have declined sharply. A recent analysis by Foreign Policy noted that while China sent 56 high-level delegations to Latin America in 2024, the U.S. sent just 14. This quiet asymmetry may turn out to be one of the most significant power shifts of the decade. While Washington debates trade routes and sanctions, Beijing is building loyalty through contracts, data, education, and patience. China's playbook in Latin America isn't revolutionary. It's methodical. And the question now is not whether the U.S. is losing ground in the region, but whether it even realizes the race has already begun. As geopolitical rivalries intensify, one of the most symbolic shifts in global alignment is unfolding not in Beijing or Washington, but in Riyadh. Long considered a cornerstone of U.S. influence in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is now deliberately repositioning itself, not with loud declarations, but with a methodical re-engineering of its energy diplomacy, investment strategy, and regional alliances. In February 2025, the Saudi Ministry of Energy confirmed that it had signed new long-term oil supply agreements with both China and India, denominated not in US dollars, but in yuan and rupees. While these currencies cover less than 10% of Riyadh's oil trade, the political significance is far greater. For nearly half a century, oil has been priced globally in dollars, a system that ensured consistent demand for U.S. currency and cemented American leverage over global trade. Breaking that tradition, even partially, is a shot across the bow of that legacy. What's driving this realignment? Part of the answer lies in defense. In late 2024, the U.S. Congress delayed a $12 billion arms package to Saudi Arabia over human rights concerns and the kingdom's neutral stance in recent international votes. In response, Riyadh announced new weapons and technology agreements with South Korea and Pakistan, shifting procurement channels toward Asian partners. A Saudi diplomat was quoted anonymously in the Financial Times as saying, "We are not pivoting away from the West. We are pivoting toward balance." The kingdom has also expanded its engagement with new financial partners. In 2024, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund invested over $28 billion into Southeast Asia, including clean energy projects in Malaysia, a tech corridor in Indonesia, and an AI partnership with Singapore. These were not minor gestures, but structural investments that signal a growing economic interdependence with the East. At the same time, cultural and media exchange has taken on a new tone. Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Education recently approved the opening of 5 Asia-focused research centers and universities across the country, focusing on strategic studies, energy trade, and interregional diplomacy. In Jeddah, a new cultural initiative launched in collaboration with Thai and Vietnamese partners will host a rotating arts and technology festival, funded jointly by Saudi and ASEAN institutions. Militarily, while Riyadh remains part of the U.S.-backed Gulf Cooperation Council framework, it has begun conducting more naval drills with Asian nations in the Arabian Sea. In March 2025, a trilateral maritime exercise with India and Japan focused on cargo route security, anti-piracy operations, and disaster response, with U.S. forces notably absent. This quiet diversification is not just tactical, it's foundational. A recent report by the International Energy Strategy Forum found that Saudi Arabia now sells more oil to the Asia-Pacific region than to the West, a shift driven by both market demand and political friction. Crucially, this isn't about choosing sides in a global conflict. It's about redesigning dependency. Saudi Arabia has watched how financial sanctions, technology restrictions, and strategic ambiguity have turned once stable relationships into vulnerabilities. Its leaders are ensuring that no single partner, including the United States, holds all the keys to the kingdom's future. For the U.S., this shift is a warning. Decades of assumed loyalty are no longer guaranteed. Soft power, Arms deals and diplomacy alone are not enough to keep partners aligned in a world of fluid interests and rising alternatives. For the rest of the world, it's a sign of how influence now flows, less through ideology and more through infrastructure, resilience, and mutual leverage. The Desert Kingdom is moving, not away from the West, but into a world where it decides the direction. And if Washington wants to keep pace, it may need to renegotiate not just deals, but expectations. Across continents and industries, boardrooms and borders, one truth is becoming unavoidable. The world order we knew is fragmenting, not with an explosion, but with calculated silence. China expands influence not through invasion, but by underwriting ports, factories, and fiber optics, from Peru to Pakistan. Saudi Arabia redefines its alliances, no longer anchored exclusively to Washington's expectations. BRICS evolves from a symbolic acronym into a functioning platform that's quietly reshaping how nations think about trade, trust, and sovereignty. Meanwhile, the United States finds itself surrounded by movements it no longer leads and frameworks it didn't help design. While Washington debates tariff rates and sanction lists, its traditional partners are hedging, not defecting, but diversifying. They're exploring new payment systems, rewriting trade routes, and choosing leverage over loyalty. What's emerging is not a single dominant power, but a patchwork of centers, multiple poles of influence, each connected by new interests and old grievances. It's not the Cold War again. It's not BRICS versus the West. It's something else. A quiet recalibration of risk, a global insurance policy against dependence, and a search for leverage in a less predictable world. None of this means the US is collapsing, nor that the dollar is dead. America still wields unmatched power in finance, defense, and innovation. But the monopoly on agenda setting is slipping, not because someone took it, but because others stopped waiting. These shifts aren't temporary reactions, they are structural rewrites. Countries are no longer measuring alignment by ideology, but by adaptability. The question they're asking is simple: who helps us build what we need on our terms? It's not about loyalty, it's about leverage. And the nations that understand that, whether in the global south or the halls of the IMF, are the ones rewriting the future. For content creators, analysts, and citizens alike, the challenge now is not just to observe, but to understand the stakes of this transition. The center of the world is no longer a place. It's a process, and the only question that matters now is, are we paying attention? Or will we realize what changed only after it's already done?